Hello, everyone. Today we're diving into a story that'll make your heart pound. A tale of betrayal that'll get your blood boiling and your trust shattered like glass under a heel. Picture this. You're sitting in your quiet kitchen, morning sun slipping through the curtains, coffee cup in hand still warm. Then your phone buzzes. A text. You open it, and your world tilts. That's what happened to me, and I bet you wouldn't survive this without feeling your heart break into pieces. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you really vibe with what I'm doing here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I want to know where you're listening from, whether it's Lagos at midnight or London at dusk. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe switch on a fan for that soft hum, and let's start this journey tonight. That text glowed on my phone screen, each word like a knife stab. Mom, you won't be joining us on the family cruise. Emily wants to keep it just family. From my son, Matthew, my only child. The same boy I'd gifted a fully paid house to just months ago. The house I stayed up nights to secure, pouring my savings, telling myself it was a gift of love, a foundation for his growing family. But now, I wasn't family enough for their cruise. I stared at those cold words, chest tightening, blood roaring in my ears, my hands, icy, stiff. Slowly type one word back. Okay, just one word, but it held everything: the hurt, the betrayal, the waking up. My mind was screaming. So I'm good enough to buy your house, but not good enough to sit at your dinner table, not good enough for your bloody cruise ship. My heart pounded like war drums, my breathing short, but my face damn. It stayed calm, almost detached. That part of me, the part that always swallowed my pride, always excused their small cruelties, died right there. My phone buzzed again. Emily, my daughter-in-law, with a follow-up, polite but sharp. You understand, right, Mom? It is just simpler for everyone. Simpler. Oh yes, Emily. Simpler. Now you've got the house. Simpler now you think you've secured your future. I set the phone down, hands trembling slightly. No tears, not anymore. Because right then, a new part of me woke up, the part that had been too soft for too long. The part that wouldn't be humiliated again. The silence in my house grew louder. I sat in the kitchen, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Sunlight crept across the tiled floor, touching the old wooden chairs, the polished countertops I'd chosen, the curtains I'd sewn by hand. All for them, Matthew and Emily. For the family I thought I was building. Now, the house felt like a museum of bad choices. On the walls hung smiling photos from vacations I'd funded Disney when Matthew was little, Cancun when Emily joined, the Christmas cabin trip I paid for entirely. I kept telling myself, this is my gift to them, always giving, always excusing their silences. I thought back to the housewarming last spring, the house I bought for them fully paid. No debt, the biggest gift I'd ever given anyone. Emily clasped my hands, eyes glistening. Mom, Olivia, you didn't have to do this. We're so grateful. You'll always have a room here, you know, and I believed her. Of course I did, because mothers believe. I remembered the nights I spent repainting their master bedroom myself, choosing soft lavender walls because Emily said it was soothing. I assembled furniture alone in my garage, every curtain rod, every floor lamp, every cozy throw blanket, all picked with care, with love. Back then, I thought their growing distance was just stress. Just work, just young people figuring things out. But now, the truth sat heavy on my chest. I'd made myself useful to them for so long, as the fixer, the financier, the quiet helper, that they stopped seeing me as a person. I was a resource, a purse, and once the purse was empty, they didn't need the woman attached to it. I couldn't stand the silence anymore. The next morning, I called Martha. She arrived within the hour, like she always did. No questions, no hesitation. That's the thing about old friends, they know when words aren't needed. Martha walked in, her eyes scanning my face. She saw it all before I could speak. Tell me, she said softly, setting her bag on the kitchen table. I slid my phone across, let her read the text herself. Her jaw clenched, but she said nothing at first, just shook her head, like she'd been expecting this. They've been planning this. Liv, she said, voice solid as rock. My stomach sank. I thought maybe it was just Emily, that she got into his head. Matthew's not like this. Martha's lips pressed tight. She reached across, placed her hand over mine, steady and firm. You raised a good boy, but also a boy who never had to struggle, who always had you picking up the pieces. Emily saw that. She saw what she could mold him into. Her words stung because they were true. I'd spent years smoothing every rough patch for Matthew, canceling my vacations to watch their dog, draining my savings to pay off their student loans, showing up whenever Emily said she needed help organizing. Always useful, always there. You need to protect yourself now, Martha said, voice low, serious before they take more. I looked at her, confused. Take more. They've already got everything. Martha's eyes sharpened. Have you checked your accounts? Is your name still on the house title? Your investments? You're still trusting them? My stomach knotted, pulse quickening. I hadn't thought to check. Why would I? They were my family, I admitted, voice barely a whisper. I let Emily handle most of the online payments. She said it was easier for taxes. Martha exhaled hard, leaned back, brow furrowing. Liv, you need to log into everything today. If anything looks off, we go straight to a lawyer. I swallowed the lump in my throat, hands trembling, but not from fear this time, from realization. I'd been too trusting, and they were counting on that to keep me quiet, compliant, invisible. But as Martha stared at me, waiting for my answer, I felt something harden in me, a small spark that had been buried too long. I sat up straight, voice steady for the first time in days. All right, we start today? Martha nodded. Good, because you're not done yet, and they're not ready for what's coming. That night, sleep was a stranger. I lay in bed, eyes wide, the faint glow of streetlights slipping through the curtains, casting odd shadows on the ceiling. Matthew's text kept replaying in my head, each word a stone thrown into the calm lake of my heart, just for family. I'd spent my life building that family, but now I was pushed out, like a stranger not welcome. I rolled over, pillow cool against my cheek, and let my mind drift to the old days I thought my love was enough to keep things solid. Memories of the house I gifted Matthew and Emily, the biggest, most costly gift I'd ever given, came rushing back, vivid as morning sunlight. That house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was my dream for my son, for his future. I remembered the long nights at my computer, balancing budgets, cutting my own expenses to make sure no debt remained. I skipped trips with friends, new dresses, even fixing my own roof to save every kobo for that gift. This is for Matthew, I told myself. When the final transfer went through, a debt-free start for him and Emily, I imagined them building a life, their children's laughter, family dinners, holidays where I'd be sitting at the head of the table, smiling as my son thrived. I remembered the day I handed over the keys. Matthew hugged me tight, eyes shining. Mom, I can't believe this. Thank you. For real. Emily stood beside him, arm in arm, her smile bright as sunlight. Mom, Olivia, this is the best gift ever. We'll cherish it. You'll see. Their words were sweet like honey, and I drank every drop, believing I'd done right. I'd spent months before helping them move in, painting walls, hanging curtains, even planting a small rose bush in the front yard because Emily said she loved roses. Every bead of sweat, every hour spent. I thought, this is my love, this is my legacy. But now, sitting in the dark, I saw that love flowed one way. The house, the sacrifices, the nights I stayed up calculating it was all a tool for them. I remembered times Matthew called, not to chat but to ask for something. Mom, I need a bit for plumbing bills. Or Emily, voice sugary over the phone. Mom, Olivia, we're thinking of upgrading the kitchen. Can you help small? I always said yes. Always opened my purse. Always thought I was helping family. But those calls grew fewer, and when I visited, their smiles faded. Their talk, short, like I was a guest who'd stayed too long. I slipped out of bed, bare feet on the cold floor. The kitchen was still silent, moonlight spilling silver across the counter. I pulled an old photo album from a drawer, something I rarely touched because it hurt my heart. But tonight, I needed to face it. I flipped through, the pictures telling a story of years I gave away. Here was Matthew, 6, grinning on my shoulders at Lagos Beach, a trip I saved a year for. Here we were in Abuja, at a cousin's wedding, me in my best aso, okay, proud to show off my son. And here, the Cancun trip after Emily joined, I paid for flights, hotels, everything, just to see them happy. But in every photo, I saw a bitter truth. I was always behind, smiling, giving, while they took. I stopped at the housewarming photo. Matthew and Emily stood in front of the new house, arms linked, me beside them, smiling like a proud mother. But now I saw what I had missed. Emily's smile, sharper than I recalled, like someone who'd won a game. Matthew, eyes distant, like he'd grown used to taking without thanks. I closed the album, chest heavy. That house wasn't a gift for family. It was a transaction, and I was the only one who didn't know the rules. I thought about the times I made excuses for them. When Matthew didn't call for months, I said, he's just busy. When Emily cut me off at dinner, I thought, she's just stressed. I'd built a castle of excuses to protect my idea of family. But that text last night burned that castle down. They didn't just exclude me from the cruise. They excluded me from their lives, only keeping me when I was useful, a purse. I check senior, a naive mother who'd never suspect. I put the album back but left the drawer open. I wanted it there. A reminder I'd given them too much, not just money, but my trust, my pride, my very self. But now, standing in the quiet kitchen, I felt a small spark, not anger. Not yet. but clarity. I'd been wrong to think love meant giving without question. Love needs to be returned, and I deserve more than this. I went back to bed, but didn't lie down. Instead, I sat by the window, looking at the dark street. Somewhere, a dog barked, and the ceiling fan hummed softly above. I thought of Martha. Her words, "You need to protect yourself." She was right. I'd given Matthew and Emily the world, but they'd thrown it away like trash. Now it was time to take back what was mine, not just the house, but my dignity, my future. As dawn broke, I knew I couldn't live in memories anymore. The house I gave them wasn't a symbol of love anymore. It was a lesson, and I'd learned it the hard way. Today, I'd start moving, not with tears or shouting, but with the sharp silence of a woman who'd woken up. They thought I was weak, but they hadn't seen me rise. My kitchen glowed under the morning light, but it didn't bring the warmth it used to. I stood there, clutching a cold cup of tea, eyes fixed on the wall where the photo from Matthew and Emily's housewarming once hung. That picture was now in a drawer, but the memory of that day, the day I thought I'd given them a future, burned bright in my mind. I'd poured my heart into that house, not just money, but dreams, hopes, and the belief that family would always be my place. But that housewarming, with its bright smiles and Emily's sweet promises, now felt like a carefully staged play. And I was the only audience who didn't know the script. I remembered that day clearly. The smell of fresh paint still lingered as I walked into the house, carrying a gift basket full of small things I thought they'd love: local honey, a set of tablecloths I'd sewn, and a bottle of red wine I'd picked carefully because Emily once said she liked reds. Guests were already there, their friends, a few new neighbors, and me, the proud mother standing in the corner, watching Matthew and Emily play perfect hosts. Emily wore a dazzling green dress, hair pinned high, gliding through the crowd like she was born to shine. Matthew, tall in a white shirt, laughed loud and clapped friends' backs, but I noticed he barely looked my way. Midway through the party, Emily pulled me aside, gripping my hand so tight I thought it was genuine. "Mom Olivia," she said, eyes sparkling like she might cry. "We can't thank you enough. This house, it's everything to us. You've given us a start we never dreamed of." I smiled, heart warm, thinking I'd done right. "You'll always have a place here," she added, voice sweet as sugar syrup. "This is your home too." I believed her. Like a mother always trusts her children's goodness. I missed the quick flick of her eyes, the way she squeezed my hands just enough to feel real, but not long enough for me to sense the fakeness. But now, standing in my kitchen, I saw clearer. Emily's promise wasn't gratitude, it was a performance. A way to keep me docile, to keep me giving without questions. I remembered the months after the housewarming. When I kept helping, I painted their living room myself when they were too busy with work. Chose soft gray because Emily said it was modern. I spent hours online picking furniture, assembling it alone in my garage. From coffee tables to bookshelves, every nail I hammered, every curtain I hung. I thought, I'm building them a home. But that home was never for me. I recalled one afternoon, weeks after the housewarming, when I visited unannounced. I brought a tray of yam cakes, thinking I'd surprise them. The door opened, and Emily stood there, her smile stiffening. "Mom Olivia, you came." Her voice was polite, but something cold lurked, like I was a delivery man at the wrong hour. Matthew was in the living room, eyes glued to his phone, only looking up to say, "Hi, Mom," before turning back. I sat at their kitchen table, the one I bought, feeling like a stranger in my own dream. Emily talked about work, renovation plans, but asked me nothing. When I offered to help with the garden, she laughed lightly. "Oh, Mom, no need. We'll hire someone." I left early, yam cakes untouched, and for the first time, I felt I didn't belong there. Now, looking back, I saw the signs were always there. The times Emily changed the topic when I asked about their finances. Matthew's short calls, always ending with a request: money for bills, for repairs. For just this once, Mom, I told myself they were busy, that they loved me in their way. But the truth was, I'd become a tool, a walking ATM, and that housewarming was just the opening act of their bigger plan. Emily didn't want me as family, she wanted me as a sponsor, someone who'd quietly fade when there was nothing left to give. I set the tea down, walked to the window. The street outside was calm, cars gliding slowly under the soft light. I thought about that house, now the center of their betrayal. I'd thought it would be a bridge, pulling us closer. Instead, it became a battlefield, where my trust was torn apart. But even in the pain, I felt a spark, not anger, but resolve. I'd given them too much, but I still had one thing they couldn't take: the strength to stand up. I went back to the kitchen table, grabbed a sheet of paper and a pen. I started writing, not a letter to them, but a list things I needed to do to take back my life. Call the lawyer, check accounts, meet Martha again. Each word I wrote, I felt lighter, like I was peeling off the stones they'd piled on my chest. They thought I'd stay the naive mother who'd cry but forgive, hurt but still give. They were wrong. Outside, a bird chirped, a small but clear sound in the stillness. I smiled. First time in days. Emily might have played the perfect daughter-in-law at that housewarming, but her play was over. I wasn't the audience anymore. I was writing a new script, and this time, I'd be the star. Today, I'd start seeking the truth, not in their words, but in numbers, papers, and actions. They'd gambled with my kindness, and I was about to show them the cost of losing. The morning light was still soft, but the air in my kitchen had shifted. It wasn't heavy anymore, but sharp, like a blade freshly sharpened. I sat there, gripping my phone tight, Martha's words looping in my head. You need to protect yourself, Liv. Her voice, solid and no nonsense, was like a bell waking me from a naive dream. I'd spent my life being a pillar for Matthew and Emily, but now I had to stand for myself. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I called Martha, and as always, she picked up quick, voice warm but ready. Liv, I'm coming now. That's what I loved about her. No questions, no delay, just action. Martha walked in less than an hour later, her sandals clicking lightly on the wood floor. She wore her favorite green blouse, hair tied neat, but her eyes shy. Those eyes were sharp, like a razor, scanning me like she could read every crack in my heart. She dropped her bag on the kitchen table, sat across, and said, voice low, tell me, Liv, everything. I pushed my phone over, screen still showing Matthew and Emily's texts. She read, lips tight, fingers tapping the table. When she finished, she didn't speak right away, just shook her head, like she'd seen this coming. They've been planning this, Liv, she said finally, voice solid as granite. My stomach dropped. I thought maybe it was just Emily, that she got into his head. Matthew's not like that. Martha leaned forward, placed her hand on mine, steady like an anchor. Liv, you raised a good boy, but also a boy who never had to fight, who always had you clearing the way. Emily saw that. She knew how to bend him. Her words hit like a punch, but I didn't flinch. I wanted to argue, to say Matthew couldn't be that way, my boy. You who used to sit on my lap, talking about spaceships and dreams of being an astronaut. But I stayed quiet, because deep down, I knew she was right. You need to check everything. Liv, Martha went on. Bank accounts, house papers, investments. You know if your name's still on them, or they've quietly moved things. Her question made my heart race. I hadn't thought to check why would I. They were my family. But then I confessed, voice small. I let Emily handle most of the online payments. She said it was easier for taxes, that I shouldn't stress in my old age. Martha breathed out hard, leaned back, eyes narrowing. Liv, you trusted too much. Today, we check everything. If anything's wrong, we go straight to a lawyer. My chest tightened, not from fear, but from waking up. I'd let Emily take control, thinking she was helping, that it was how a daughter-in-law cares for her mother-in-law. But now, I saw it. It wasn't help. It was control. Martha pulled her chair closer, took a notebook from her bag. Where are we starting? She asked. Pen ready. I took a deep breath, tried to keep my voice steady. The bank, I've got savings, retirement fund, and the house. Martha nodded, scribbling fast. Good. We'll check everyone. Where's your password? If Emily's touched anything, there'll be traces. We started right there at the kitchen table. My laptop open, screen light glowing on our faces. I logged into my bank account, hands shaking a bit as I typed the password. Martha sat beside, saying nothing, but her presence was like a solid wall. Everything looked normal. At first, electricity bills, groceries, charity, familiar stuff. But Martha didn't let me stop. Scroll down further. Liv, look for small things. Transfers that don't add up. I did, going through months. And then I saw it small transfers. 50,000 naira, 100,000 naira, labeled home expenses or emergency repairs. But I hadn't approved any repairs, and those transfers went to a second account. Not mine. I clicked deeper, heart pounding. Emily's name appeared, linked to a secondary card on my account. I whispered, unable to finish. Martha leaned in. Martha leaned in. Read the screen. She's been taking your money. Liv, not just once. This is the system. I stared at the numbers, feeling the floor shift beneath me. Not huge amounts, but enough to see she'd been skimming my money, bit by bit, thinking I wouldn't notice. Martha grabbed my hand, voice soft but sharp. You're not a fool. Liv, you just trusted. But now you know. We'll fix this. I nodded, head still spinning. I need a lawyer, right? Martha smiled. A small, sharp smile. Oh, yes, and not just a lawyer. We need someone to dig deeper, maybe a private investigator. They'll find everything Emily and Matthew have done. The idea of an investigator made me pause. but only for a second. I wasn't the woman afraid of confrontation anymore. Not now. Before Martha left, she hugged me. A tight, quick hug. You're stronger than you think. Liv, they gambled with your kindness, but they haven't seen you fight. She walked out, leaving me in a kitchen that felt bigger, like I'd reclaimed some space. I sat down, looked at the still open laptop. Those numbers weren't just transactions, they were proof, pieces of a betrayal I'd been blind to for too long. I picked up my phone, called Mr. Dalton, my lawyer for years. He answered with his usual cheery voice. Olivia. Long time. What's up? I took a deep breath, voice steadier than I expected. I need to see you, today if possible. Big issue with Matthew and Emily. I need to lock everything down. He went quiet for a second, then said, I'll set up the meeting room. Good, I agreed, feeling a new energy surge through me. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. As I closed the laptop, sunlight hit the locket on the windowsill, my late husband's gift. I touched it, feeling the small engravings. Richard would have known what to do. He'd have told me to be tough, but I'd learned that the hard way. Today, I wasn't just protecting money, I was protecting myself. And nobody, not Matthew, not Emily, would stand in my way. My kitchen table was now a war zone, laptop glowing, papers scattered, and a cold cup of tea forgotten. After Martha left, I couldn't stop. Her words, if Emily's touched anything, there'll be traces, rang like an alarm bell. I'd trusted too long, let Emily control accounts with excuses about tax convenience or resting in my old age. But now, with the screen's light on my face, I wasn't the naive mother anymore. I was a woman hunting for truth, and what I found made my blood run cold. I logged back into my bank account, hands steadier this time. Martha had taught me to look beyond the usual electricity. Groceries, charity. I scrolled down. Through months, then years, small transfers started showing, like cracks in a wall I thought was solid. 20,000 naira for home want in a bond as 50,000 naira for emergency costs. 100,000 naira for furniture upgrades. I hadn't approved these. The house I gave them didn't need fixing. It was new. Built to Emily's specs, from hardwood floors to the chandelier she insisted on. But these funds didn't go to a joint account. They went to a secondary card. And when I clicked details, Emily's name popped up, clear as a dagger. I dug wider, checking my retirement fund, investments, things I rarely touched because Emily said she handled it. My heart raced as I saw more transactions. A 200,000 naira transfer to a personal investment account under Emily's maiden name. Another 150,000 naira labeled credit card debt repayment. But I don't have a credit card. I clicked deeper, and that's when I saw the full picture. Emily had linked her card to my accounts, siphoning money steadily, bit by bit, like an ant carrying off crumbs. Not enough to raise alarms, but enough to add up. Over 2 years, she'd taken nearly 5 million naira, and, like a moo-moo, never noticed. I leaned back, breath short. The kitchen was silent, only the ceiling fan, humming steady. This wasn't just a few wrong transactions. This was theft. Planned, hidden behind smiles and fake hugs. I thought of times Emily visited, bringing gari cakes or calling me mum with that sugary voice. Each time, she was counting my money, planning to take more without me suspecting. And Matthew, my son, the boy I raised, did he know? Or was he just blind, letting Emily lead him like a puppet? I opened another account, my emergency savings. It had been touched 2 small withdrawals, labeled living expenses. I laughed, a dry, hollow sound echoing in the empty room. Living expenses. They lived in a house I bought. No rent, no debt. What expenses needed my money? I printed every transaction, each page falling like proof of their betrayal. Each number whispered, they don't love you. They love your money. I called Martha, voice calm but cold. You were right. Emily's been taking money, millions, quietly, for years. Martha wasn't shocked. I knew it. Liv, she's too smooth, too sweet. That's how they act when they want something. She paused, then said, you need to see a lawyer now, and a private investigator. What you found is just the surface. I nodded. Though she couldn't see, I've booked Dalton for this afternoon. Can you come? Martha laughed. Sharp. You think I'll let you go alone? 2 p.m. I'm there. That afternoon, me and Martha sat in Mr. Dalton's office. A small, neat room with wooden shelves and the smell of old paper. Dalton, gray-haired and deep-voiced, looked at me with real concern. Olivia, what's going on? I told him everything, the text, the transactions, the betrayal. Martha chipped in, voice sharp like a cutlass. Emily's been stealing from her, systematically, and Matthew's either in on it or too dumb to notice. I handed Dalton the printed papers, my evidence. He scanned them, brows knitting. This is serious, Olivia. Not just a breach of trust. This is financial fraud, possibly elder abuse. I took a deep breath, the term elder stinging like a slap, but I didn't let it shake me. I want to lock everything. Accounts, house, everything. They shouldn't touch a thing. Dalton nodded, jotting fast. We can start now. I'll prepare orders to cancel all of Emily's financial authorizations. For the house, we need to review the transfer papers. You want it back. I looked at Martha. She nodded slightly, and I said, voice solid, yes, I want it back. Dalton smiled, a small, knowing smile. Good. We'll need a private investigator to dig deeper. I know a reliable one, Mr. Adebayo. He's discreet and thorough. I agreed, feeling like a door had opened, not to escape, but to charge forward. As we left the office, the afternoon sun glowed golden, but I didn't feel its warmth. I felt sharp, like the blade I was honing. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table, looking at the printed papers. Each transaction was a cut, but also a weapon. Emily thought she was smart, taking my money without leaving clear tracks. But she underestimated me. I wasn't just a sad mother. I was a woman who'd woken up, and I'd make her pay not with tears, but with cold, hard truth. I lifted Richard's locket from the windowsill, held it tight. You'd be proud. You know, I whispered, I'm fighting. The locket was cool, a reminder I wasn't alone, even if my family had turned their backs. I looked out the window. Night was falling, but I wasn't afraid of the dark. It was where I found my strength. And Emily, Matthew, they weren't ready for what I was bringing. That night, the darkness in my house wasn't suffocating anymore. It was like a blanket, wrapping me in sharp stillness, where I could think, plan, and feel the strength growing inside me. After the meeting with Mr. Dalton, I knew I was on the right path. Accounts would be locked, the house reclaimed, and an investigator would uncover every secret Emily and Matthew thought they'd hidden. But as I prepared for bed, something slithered in, like a snake sneaking into my dreams. A plain white envelope slid under my front door, lay there on the kitchen floor when I walked in the next morning, like it'd been waiting for me all night. I stood still, staring at the envelope, heart racing but not panicked. On it was a sticky note. Emily's slanted handwriting, clear as a venomous whisper. Sign when you're ready. Mom, it'll make things easier while we're away. I picked it up, hands steady, but my fingers cold as ice. They were gone on that bloody cruise ship, sipping cocktails, laughing under the sea sun, thinking I was still the obedient puppet at home, ready to sign whatever they pushed. I opened the envelope, slowly, like diffusing a bomb. Inside was a stack of papers, neatly typed, looking harmless as insurance forms. But I wasn't naive anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, morning light filtering through the curtains, illuminating the pages. At first glance, they were routine amendments, estate updates, simplifying authority, as Emily always said. But I read carefully, line by line, word by word. And when I flipped to page 3, my stomach twisted. Buried in dry legal jargon was a full power of attorney. Permanent. Irrevocable. If I signed, Emily would have total control finances, property, even my medical decisions. She didn't just want money. She wanted to erase me. Quietly. Legally. While still calling me Mum with that fake smile. I set the papers down, breathing steady but heart pounding like a drum. This wasn't just greed. This was an attack. Carefully planned, timed when they thought I was weakest while they were away, on the sea, where they could play innocent if I reacted. I imagined Emily drafting this, maybe in a lawyer's office, choosing words to hide her intent, thinking I'd sign without reading, like I used to with small bills she brought. And Matthew, my son, did he know, or was he just standing there, nodding like a puppet, letting Emily pull the strings? I called Martha right away, voice calm but cold. You need to come. Martha. Emily just took this to a new level. She was there in 30 minutes, hair still wet from a shower, eyes sharp as knives. I handed her the papers, and she read, brows knitting tight. When she reached the power of attorney, she exhaled hard, looked at me. She doesn't just want money, Liv. She wants your whole life. This is how they push old people into care homes, sell their houses, and live large. I nodded, not surprised. They thought I'd sign because I'm hurt, because I want to keep peace. Martha laughed, dry. They don't know you've changed. We called Mr. Dalton, and I emailed him photos of the documents. He called back in 10 minutes. Voice low but urgent. Olivia, don't sign anything. This is a clear attempt to seize control of your assets and life. I'll add it to the file. It'll be evidence if we go to court. I agreed, feeling like I was building a wall, each brick laid firm. Mr. Adebayo, the investigator, has started digging, Dalton added. He's checking if Emily's planning anything else, maybe loans or asset transfers. I thanked him, but when I hung up, I didn't feel relief. I felt ready. I locked the documents in a box, not out of fear, but because they were weapons. Emily had bet I'd stay the obedient mother, signing papers in tears, thinking I was saving family. But she didn't know I'd learned a bitter lesson. Love isn't submission. I looked out the window, the street quiet, only sparrows chirping. I thought of the cruise ship, of Matthew and Emily, laughing, thinking they'd won. They didn't know I was waiting, not with tears, but with a plan. I lifted Richard's locket, held it tight. You'd tell me to do this, right? I whispered, hit them with the truth. The locket was cool, like a silent agreement. I remembered days Richard and I planned our future. How he always said, "Liv, don't let anyone walk over you." I'd forgotten that too long. But now, it was like a fire in me. I called Martha again, not because I needed her, but to share. What do you think they'll do when they see I didn't sign? Martha laughed, voice sharp. They'll panic. Liv, she built her whole future on you staying quiet. When you speak, her world will crash. I smiled, first time in days. Good. Let it crash. I went back to the kitchen table, opened my laptop. I started noting, not just the documents, but everything, every transaction, every lie, every fake smile. I wrote like I was telling Richard, like he was sitting beside, nodding. Each word was another brick in my wall. Emily thought she could take everything without cost, but I wasn't just keeping what was mine. I'd make her see the price of gambling with my kindness. As night fell, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the window, locket in hand, watching streetlights dance on the pavement. Silence wasn't my enemy anymore. It was my ally, sharp and strong. They thought I was weak, but they hadn't seen me fight. The cruise ship might be gliding on the sea, but when it docked, their world wouldn't be the same. I'd make sure of that. Not with shouting, but with a silence sharp as a blade, cutting through every lie they'd built. The morning light was gentle today, but my kitchen air was different, not heavy, but sharp, like a blade I'd been honing. I sat there, clutching a fresh coffee, steam rising but not soothing the cold in my chest. Emily's power of attorney papers, the trap slid under my door, were locked in a box, but they still haunted me. A reminder I'd nearly lost everything. Today, I wasn't just a hurt mother. I was a woman building my wall again, each step sure. Guided by the sharp truth I'd uncovered, the meeting with Mr. Dalton this afternoon would be a turning point, and I was ready. I got to Dalton's office early, carrying the printed transactions and Emily's power of attorney trap. Martha came along, like a loyal soldier, her voice soft but cutting as we walked in. Today, we lock everything. Liv, no gaps for them to slip through. I nodded, feeling like a warrior in invisible armor. Dalton's office was the same wooden shelves, old paper smell, dim light from a big window. He greeted me with a warm smile, but his eyes were serious as he saw the papers on his desk. Olivia, you did well bringing these. We have enough to move fast. I told him everything, the text, Emily's transactions, and now the power of attorney. Dalton scanned the documents, brows tightening at the permanent authorization part. This isn't just greed, he said, voice low. This is a calculated move to control your assets and life completely. If you'd signed, they could sell your house, drain your accounts, even put you in a care home without your say. Martha snorted, muttering, she's a proper snake. I didn't laugh. I just nodded, voice solid. I want to block everything. Accounts, house, all. They shouldn't touch a thing. Dalton scribbled fast, pen scratching on paper. We'll start by canceling all of Emily's financial authorizations. I'll send notices to your bank and investment firms, demanding a freeze on all transactions unless you sign in person. He looked up, met my eyes. For the house, we can file to reverse the transfer. But it's tricky. You gifted it legally, so we need to prove manipulation or fraud. These transactions and the power of attorney are a strong start. I took a deep breath, feeling like I was crossing a narrow bridge. Do whatever it takes. I want it back. Martha squeezed my hand under the table, a small gesture but enough to make me feel not alone. Dalton nodded. Good, I'll start drafting the papers. Mr. Adebayo, the investigator, is already digging. He's checking if Emily's arranged any loans or asset transfers. If she's used the house as collateral, we'll know soon. The thought of Emily going that far made my heart clench, but I didn't let it shake me. Thank you, I said, voice even, and I want everything documented. If they sue, I want to be ready. Dalton smiled, a small, knowing smile. You're ahead of them. Olivia, this is how you win, not loud, but careful and sharp. We left the office as the sun still hung high, but I felt the darkness lifting. Martha clapped my shoulder as we stepped to the car. You're doing right. Liv, they thought you'd cry and let go, but you're building a fortress. I smiled, first time in days, not from joy, but because I knew she was right. I drove home, Richard's locket cool in my pocket. The kitchen welcomed me with familiar silence, but now it was a place of strength, not pain. I opened my laptop, checked accounts again. Though I knew Dalton was handling it, I printed more transactions. Arranged them in neat columns, each number a bullet in my arsenal. I thought of Emily, on the cruise ship, maybe bragging to friends about the family house she didn't pay a dime for. I thought of Matthew, my son, who used to draw me pictures with crayons, now standing by her, maybe blind, maybe in on it. Both didn't know I was moving, quietly but relentless. I lifted the locket, held it tight. You'd tell me to do this, right? I whispered, hit them with the truth. The locket was cool, like a silent yes. I remembered Richard's words, Liv, don't let anyone walk over you. I'd forgotten that too long, but now it was a fire in me. I called Martha, not because I needed her, but to share. Dalton's locking everything, I said, and the investigators is digging. They've got no chance. Martha, she laughed, voice sharp. Good, she thought she was smart. But you're smarter. Liv, when she comes back from that ship, her world will crash. I smiled, looking at the quiet street. I don't want revenge, I said, voice small but sure. I just want to protect what's mine. Martha went quiet for a second, then said, that's not revenge. Liv, that's justice. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the window, locket in hand, watching streetlights dance on the pavement. Silence was my weapon, but it wasn't weak. It was sharp, like the blade I was honing. Emily and Matthew thought they could take everything without cost. They thought I'd stay the obedient mother, crying but forgiving. But I wasn't crying anymore. I was building, not a castle of naive dreams, but a fortress of truth and strength. I thought of the cruise ship, of the days they had left on the sea, thinking they'd won. They didn't know that when they docked, the world they built on betrayal wouldn't exist. I'd make sure of that, not with shouting, but with quiet, sure steps, each one bringing me closer to taking back my life. The locket was cool in my hand, a reminder I wasn't alone. Richard was watching, and I, Olivia, was fighting not just for my money, but for my dignity, my future, for me. Today's morning light felt different, softer, like it knew I needed a moment to breathe. I stood in the kitchen, holding a coffee. But this time, I wasn't staring at the laptop or papers full of betraying numbers. Instead, I looked out the window, where branches swayed gently in the breeze. After meeting Dalton, after seeing my plan take shape, I felt a shift. Not anger, not pain, but a clarity, like fog clearing to show the path ahead. But before moving on, I needed space not to run, but to remember who I was before Matthew and Emily turned me into a walking purse. I slipped on a light sweater, grabbed Richard's locket from the windowsill, and walked to the park near my house. This park was where Richard and I went every weekend, him reading the paper on a bench, me feeding ducks, laughing when he pretended to grumble about breadcrumbs on his shoes. He called it our calm corner, and today, I needed that calm more than ever. The path to the park was familiar, each step like an old rhythm, taking me back to days I was Olivia, not just Mum or Mum Olivia. I sat on the old bench, wood worn under my hands, and let the cool air fill my chest. I opened the locket, looked at the tiny photo inside Richard and me, younger, grinning on our 25th anniversary. His eyes sparkled, smile cheeky, like he knew a secret I hadn't guessed. You'd have seen through them sharp. I whispered, finger tracing the photo. Richard was always sharper than me. He'd said, Liv, you're too kind, but not everyone deserves your kindness. I'd laughed, brushed it off, thinking family was different. But now, sitting here, I knew he was right. Matthew and Emily took my kindness and made it a weapon. But I wasn't that naive woman anymore. I watched ducks glide on the pond, water rippling soft like a lullaby. I thought of the years I gave to Matthew, late nights sewing his school uniforms, early mornings driving him to football practice, saving every naira for his special birthdays. I gave him everything, not for reward, but because that's a mother's love. But that love wasn't returned. Matthew grew up, and somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me as a mother, only as a provider. Emily saw it before I did, and she worked it. Every smile, every sweet Mum Olivia. I closed my eyes, let the breeze brush my hair. I remembered one time in this park, when Matthew was small, running to me with a scraped knee, crying hard. I hugged him, wiped his tears, and said, "You're stronger than you think." Matt, now, I told myself that I'm stronger than I think. Emily and Matthew bet I'd stay silent, that I'd cry but forgive, hurt but keep giving. They didn't know I'd found my strength, not in anger, but in sharp silence, in quiet, sure steps. I opened my eyes, watched the pond shimmer. Another memory rose, Richard and me on this bench, planning our first house. We worked hard, saved every kobo, and when we finally paid it off, he engraved that date on this locket. This is our legacy. Live, he said, not just for Matthew, But for you, I held the locket tight, feeling he was reminding me that legacy was still mine, and I had the right to protect it. Emily and Matthew might have taken the house I gave her, but they couldn't take my will, couldn't take the Olivia Richard loved. I stood, walked slowly along the pond's edge. An old woman feeding pigeons smiled at me, and I nodded back. I didn't feel lonely. I felt whole, like for the first time in years, I was living for me. I thought of Dalton, of Adebayo, of the wall I was building to protect my assets and dignity. Emily and Matthew thought they could erase me from their lives without cost, but I'd show them the price of gambling with my kindness. I stopped under a big oak, branches rustling above. I lifted the locket, kissed it softly. "Thank you, Richard," I whispered, "for reminding me who I am." I walked home, steps lighter. When I opened the door, the kitchen wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was my command center, where I planned, where I fought. I called Dalton, checked progress. "Everything's on track. Olivia," he said. "We'll have the account freeze orders tomorrow, and the house reversal is being drafted. Adebayo's got some leads he'll report soon." I hung up, sat at the kitchen table. I opened a notebook, started writing not a list of grievances, but a plan for my future. I wouldn't just take back what was mine. I'd build a new life, one not tied to fake smiles or others' gratitude. I thought of Martha, the park, Richard's locket. They were my anchors, reminding me I wasn't alone, that I was stronger than Emily and Matthew could imagine. As night fell, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the window, locket in hand, watching streetlights dance. Silence was my weapon, but it wasn't weak. It was a blade, sharp and precise, and I was learning to wield it. The cruise ship was still gliding on the sea, carrying Matthew and Emily, who thought they'd won. But when they docked, they'd meet a new Olivia, not the mother they used, but a woman unafraid, unsilent, and definitely not prey. The morning light was dim, slipping through the curtains, but I'd been awake for hours, sitting at the kitchen table with a cold tea and my laptop glowing. The air in my house wasn't heavy anymore, but sharp, like a blade I'd honed. After days facing the truth, Matthew's cold text, Emily's sneaky transaction, that wicked power of attorney, I wasn't the naive woman who trusted fake smiles. Every step I took, from meeting Dalton to sitting under the oak in the park, was a brick in the wall I built to protect myself. Today, I waited for a call from Mr. Adebayo, the private investigator, digging into secrets Emily and Matthew thought were buried. I knew he'd find something, and I was ready to face it. My phone buzzed at 10 Adebayo's number flashing. I picked up quick, voice calm but sharp. "Mrs. Gardner," he started, voice measured but heavy. "You'll want to see what I found. I can come now if you're ready." I took a deep breath, feeling like I was standing before a door about to open. "Come now," I said, and hung up. I called Martha, not wanting to face this alone. "Adebayo's got news," I said short. She didn't ask questions, just said, 15 minutes. I'm there." That's Martha, always ready, like a lighthouse in a storm. Adebayo arrived first, a tall man, salt and pepper hair, in a sharp navy suit, carrying a slim but heavy briefcase. Martha came right after, eyes cutting like knives as she sat beside me at the kitchen table. Adebayo didn't waste time. He opened the case, pulled out a stack of papers and a USB. "Mrs. Gardner, your daughter-in-law, Emily, used the house you gifted as collateral for a second mortgage. The application was filed last week, just before they boarded the cruise." His words hit like a stone dropping into a still pond, rippling but not shaking me. "Second mortgage," I repeated, voice even. "They haven't owned it long enough to need a loan, and I paid it off." Adebayo nodded, slid a paper toward me, a copy of the loan application. They presented it as a clean family gift. "No mention of any manipulation or unauthorized transactions from your accounts. The bank was impressed with your generous family backing." I laughed. A dry, cold sound in the quiet kitchen. "Generous," I muttered. "They're building debt on a gift I paid clear." Martha snorted, muttering, "She's a proper juju woman." Adebayo continued, voice steady. "They've got pre-approval, but the loan's not finalized. If you don't act, they could draw funds as soon as they're back." I looked at the papers, saw Emily's signature, that slanted handwriting familiar from the note on the envelope. She'd planned this long, maybe from the day I handed over the keys. "Do they know I've found out?" I asked. "Eyes still on the documents." Adebayo shook his head. "No, ma'am. They think you're still at home. No suspicions." I nodded, a small smile creeping up, not of joy, but clarity. They'd bet on my silence. But I was moving, quietly and relentless. Martha leaned in. "Read the loan form. She's not just stealing small money. Liv, she's building an empire on your back." I nodded, not surprised. "And Matthew?" I asked Adebayo. "Is he in on it?" He shrugged lightly. "His name's not on the loan, but he signed the original house papers. Either he knows, or he's blind, both bad for you. His words hurt, but I didn't shrink. Matthew, my son, who used to draw me pictures with crayons, was part of this game, whether active or passive. Adebayo handed me the USB. This has the full report, transactions, loan application, and some emails between Emily and the banks. I also found another investment account in her maiden name, funded from your accounts. I held the USB, small but heavy like a bullet. Thank you, I said, voice is solid. This is all I need. He nodded, stood. If you need more, call. But with what we have, you hold the advantage. He left, leaving me and Martha in a kitchen that felt like a command center. Martha looked at me, eyes gleaming. You've got them, Liv. This evidence will bury them if they dare sue. I nodded, but didn't feel victory, not yet. I felt resolve, like a slow-burning fire nothing could quench. I called Dalton, emailed Adebayo's report. He called back quick, voice urgent but pleased. Olivia, this is gold. The loan, with the transactions and power of attorney, shows clear intent. I'll add it to the file and fast-track the house reversal. We'll also demand the bank cancel the loan immediately. I hung up, sat down, looked at the USB on the table. It wasn't just proof. It was the blade I'd used to cut the ropes Emily and Matthew had tied me with. I thought of them, on the cruise ship, laughing, thinking they'd won. They didn't know I was building a wall, not with anger, but with cold, hard truth. I lifted Richard's locket, held it tight. You'd be proud. You know, I whispered. I'm fighting, not with tears, but with strength. The locket was cool, like a silent agreement. I remembered Richard's words. Liv, you're a fire nobody sees till it blazes. Now I felt that fire, and it wasn't burning me, it was driving me. Martha stood, clapped my shoulder. You're doing right. Liv, they thought you were weak, but they haven't seen you rise. I smiled, not from joy, but because I knew she was right. I wasn't just protecting money. I was protecting myself, my dignity, my future. Emily and Matthew thought I'd stay silent, but they didn't know my silence was now a weapon, sharp and precise. As night fell, I sat by the window, locket in hand, watching streetlights dance. The cruise ship was still on the sea, but when it docked, their world would crumble. I'd make sure of that, not with shouting, but with quiet, sure steps, each one bringing me closer to taking back my life. They thought I was prey, but I was the hunter, and I was closing in. The morning light sparkled on the kitchen table, but I didn't notice its beauty. I sat there, hands on a stack of papers from Mr. Dalton, heart beating steady but strong, like a drum signaling victory. After Adebayo's report, Emily's second mortgage, hidden accounts, sneaky transactions, I knew I wasn't just protecting assets. I was taking back my life, step by sure step. Today was the day I'd sign the papers to reverse the house transfer, cancel Emily's financial powers, and lock down my future. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. And I was ready. I got to Dalton's office early, carrying Adebayo's USB and the power of attorney trap. Emily slid under my door. Martha didn't come this time. She had work, but called this morning, voice sharp. Sign those papers. Liv, lock that door and throw the key away. I smiled as I walked in, feeling like a warrior stepping onto a battlefield, not with a sword, but with a pen and truth. Dalton greeted me, eyes glinting with new respect. Olivia, you've done well. We have everything to end this. He pushed a stack of papers toward me, each page marked clearly where I'd sign. I sat, read every line. No rush. I wasn't the woman who signed papers blind, trusting family wouldn't harm her. The documents covered the house transfer reversal, canceling all of Emily's financial authorizations and freezing any accounts linked to her. Another demanded the bank cancel Emily's second mortgage, with Adebayo's proof it was based on fraud. Dalton explained, voice low but sure. When you sign these, the house goes back to your name. Emily and Matthew will have no legal claim, and not one naira from your accounts will pass through their hands again. I nodded, picked up the pen, but before signing, I paused, not from doubt, but to feel the weight of this moment. These papers weren't just ink and pages. They were years of sacrifice, nights I stayed up for Matthew, dreams I poured into that house. They were the cuts from Emily's betrayal, and now they were the blade I'd used to cut the ropes binding me. I looked at Dalton, voice solid. If they sue, we have enough to win. He smiled, a small, sharp smile. Olivia, with Adebayo's report, the transactions, and the power of attorney, they'd bury themselves suing. You hold the advantage. I signed the first I signed the first page, my handwriting clear, bold. Each signature was a brick in my new wall, not to hide, but to protect. I signed on, page after page, feeling lighter with every stroke. When I signed the last, I set the pen down, exhaled, slow. Dalton gathered the papers, nodded. It's done. Olivia, the house is yours. Accounts are locked. They can't touch a thing. I smiled, not of joy, but release. Thank you, I said, voice even. And if they try anything, he leaned forward, eyes gleaming. We have every shred transactions, loan application, power of attorney. They'd sink themselves deeper. As I left the office, the afternoon sun glowed golden, but I didn't feel its warmth. I felt strong, like an oak, standing through a storm. I drove home, Richard's locket cool in my pocket. I did it, love, I whispered, like he was beside me. I thought of Matthew and Emily, on the cruise ship, thinking they'd won. They didn't know that when they docked, their world built on betrayal would be gone. Back home, I didn't sit still. I called a real estate firm, a decision I'd mulled since the park. I want to sell a house, I said, voice calm. The agent, Mrs. Fund Me, sounded eager. It's in a good area. New, no debt. I want a quick sale, cash. She agreed to meet tomorrow to view the house, the one Matthew and Emily still thought was theirs. I didn't want to keep it. It wasn't a gift of love anymore. It was a lesson, and I'd learned it. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, checked accounts one last time before the bank enforced the freeze. Everything was fine. No new transactions. No sign Emily was sneaking in. I thought of her, maybe sipping wine on the ship's deck, bragging about the family house she planned to mortgage. I thought of Matthew, my son, once my light, now by her side. Maybe blind, maybe complicit. Both didn't know I'd moved, quietly but relentless. I lifted the locket, held it tight. You'd be proud. Richard, I whispered, I'm not just protecting myself. I'm building again. The locket was cool, like a silent yes. I remembered Richard's words. Live, you're a fire nobody sees till it blazes. Now I felt that fire, not burning me, but driving me. I called Martha, told her about the signatures and sale plan. She laughed, voice sharp. You're playing chess. Live, and she doesn't know she's lost. When they come back, they'll fall flat. I smiled, feeling lighter than ever. Not revenge. Martha, just taking back what's mine. She snorted. Call it what you want, but you've won, and they'll feel it. That night, I sat by the window, locket in hand. Flush's street light stands. Silence was my weapon, sharp and precise. The cruise ship was still on the sea, but when it docked, Emily and Matthew would meet a new Olivia, not the mother they used, but a woman unafraid, unsilent, and definitely not prey. I smiled, not from anger, but because I knew I'd won not by shouting, but with quiet steps, each one bringing me closer to freedom. I thought of the house, of selling it. I didn't want to keep a thing full of betraying memories. The sale money would be mine, to build a new life, maybe a trip, maybe a small house in the countryside, where I could plant flowers and hear birds. I didn't need Matthew's forgiveness or Emily's fake smiles. I needed myself, and for the first time in years, I felt I was enough. The morning light twinkled on the kitchen floor, but I didn't care for its beauty. I stood there, holding a coffee, eyes on the window where leaves swayed in the breeze. After signing with Dalton, after locking accounts and reversing the house, I felt a sharp release, like I'd cut a rope binding me too long, but I wasn't done. Today, the house, the one I thought was a love gift to Matthew and Emily, was sold. Quietly, fast, and completely out of their control. They were still on the cruise ship, sipping cocktails, thinking they were in charge. They didn't know that when they docked, the world they built on betrayal would be ashes. I'd contacted Mrs. Fund Me, the estate agent, right after signing with Dalton. I want a quick sale, I said, voice calm but firm. Cash, no haggling. Fund Me, with her warm, professional tone, agreed to meet at the house the next day. I went there alone. Walking through the door I'd hung curtains for. Down the hall I'd painted. The house was still beautiful, gleaming wood floors, light flooding through big windows, but it felt empty, like a stage after the actors left. I didn't feel regret. It wasn't Matthew and Emily's house anymore. It was mine, and I'd decide its fate. Fund Me came with a young couple, the amidst, looking for a place to start their marriage. They loved the house instantly. She liked the open kitchen. He loved the wide backyard. I stood in the corner, quiet, listening to their dreams. Family parties, a reading nook, a small vegetable garden. I smiled, not from sadness, but knowing the house would go to people who'd cherish it, unlike Emily and Matthew, who saw it as a tool. We want it. Mr. Adeyemi said, eyes bright. Cash. Close this week. I nodded, and Fund Me beamed. Mrs. Gardner, you've got great buyers here. The deal moved fast. Dalton oversaw the paperwork, ensuring no loopholes for Emily or Matthew to sneak through. The money went to a new account, unlinked to anything they'd touched. When I got the transfer confirmation, I sat in my car, staring at the number on my phone. It wasn't just money, it was freedom, strength, proof I'd taken back what they tried to steal. I lifted Richard's locket, held it tight. I did it. Love, I whispered, not for them, But for me, I didn't tell anyone about the sale. Not even Martha, because I wanted this moment for myself, at least for a few days. I imagined Emily and Matthew on the ship's deck, bragging about the family house they planned to mortgage for their empire. They didn't know that when they docked, the house would be someone else, and I'd be standing there, not with tears, but with a quiet, sharp smile. I thought of Matthew, my son, once my light, now by Emily's side. Maybe blind, maybe complicit. Both didn't see me moving, quietly but relentless. I drove home, locket cool in my pocket. The kitchen welcomed me with familiar silence. But now it was a place of strength, not a museum of wrong choices. I opened my laptop, checked the new account sale and money save. Untouchable. I called Dalton, confirmed everything was done. You did well, Olivia, he said, voice full of respect. They've got no chance, even if they sue. Adebayo's report and these papers are a steel wall. I smiled, thanked him, and hung up. I sat at the kitchen table, took a new notebook. I started writing not a list of betrayals, but a plan for my future. I wanted to travel, maybe to Calabar, where Richard and I dreamed of going but never did. I wanted to plant a flower garden, hear birds sing, live a life not tied to fake smiles or others' gratitude. I didn't need Matthew or Emily. I needed myself, and for the first time in years, I felt I was enough. That night, I sat by the window, locket in hand, watching streetlights dance. Silence was my weapon, sharp and precise. The cruise ship was still on the sea, but when it docked, Emily and Matthew would meet a new Olivia, not the mother they used, but a woman unafraid, unsilent, and definitely not prey. I smiled, not from anger, but because I knew I'd won not by shouting, but with quiet steps, each one bringing me closer to freedom. I thought of the ADMs, maybe planning their move into the new house. I wasn't jealous. I was glad it'd be filled with real laughter, not lies. I lifted the locket, kissed it softly. Thank you, Richard, I whispered, for reminding me who I am. I remembered his words. Liv, you're a fire nobody sees till it blazes. Now I felt that fire, not burning me, but driving me. I called Martha. Couldn't hold it in. I sold the house, I said, voice small but sure. She went quiet for a second, then laughed loud. It was all. Liv, you're a proper player. When they come back, they'll fall flat. You make me proud. I laughed, feeling lighter than ever. Not revenge, Martha, just taking back what's mine. She snorted. Call it what you want, but you've won, and they'll feel it. As I hung up, I looked at the quiet street. I didn't need Matthew's forgiveness or Emily's fake smiles. I needed myself, and I'd found myself not in their approval, but in the strength I built from the ashes of their betrayal. The cruise ship might be gliding on the sea, but when it docked, I'd be standing, not with tears, but with a quiet, sharp smile, and a life fully mine. Today's morning light carried a new vibe, brighter, like it knew I'd climbed a mountain and was now standing on top, looking down at my victory. I stood in the kitchen, holding a coffee, but this time, I wasn't looking out the window with pain or plans. I looked with peace, a feeling I hadn't had in years. The house was sold, accounts locked, and every rope Emily and Matthew used to tie me was cut. They were still on the cruise ship, thinking they controlled everything. But today, when they docked, they'd meet a new Olivia, not the mother they used, but a woman who'd taken back her life. I decided to go to the house now, the Adiemis's house, one last time, not to regret, but to witness the moment Matthew and Emily realized they'd lost. I drove slowly, Richard's locket in my pocket, cool when I touched it. I parked a block away, stood under an oak's shade, watching the house from afar. 2 moving vans were parked out front, and the Adiemis were chatting with Funmi, the agent, smiles bright on their faces. The house looked alive, like it had found its true owners, people who'd fill it with love, not greed. Then I saw them. Matthew's car rolled up, stopping out front. Emily stepped out first, sunglasses perched high, shouting something at Matthew as he pulled luggage from the trunk. They looked worn, despite the fancy holiday, maybe the cost of living with lies. Matthew stared at his phone, as usual, not noticing, until both froze, eyes locked on the vans and the strange couple at the door. I walked slowly across the street, each step measured, unhurried. I wanted them to see me, to feel the weight of what was coming. Matthew spotted me first. Mum, his voice shook, half confused, half scared. Emily turned, eyes narrowing, face shifting from shock to anger. What's going on? Who are these people? She pointed at the Adiemis, now inside with Funmi, the door closing behind them. I stood there, calm, hands in pockets, locket cool under my fingers. You don't need to worry about managing anything for me anymore, I said, voice even, almost soft. Emily lunged forward, voice shrill. What do you mean? This is our house. We're in the middle of refinancing. I pulled a file from my bag, copies of the house reversal order, sale contract, and Adebayo's report. I handed it to Matthew, who took it, hands shaking. Not your house, I said, still calm. Not anymore. Emily snatched the file from him, flipping through, breathing fast as she read. Her face paled, but she still screamed, "You can't do this. We have contracts. You'll regret this when you calm down." I tilted my head, smiled not of joy, but clarity. "Help. You mean siphoning my accounts behind my back, mortgaging the house I gave, and sliding power of attorney papers under my door while you were off cruising. That's help." Emily, her mouth opened, but no words came. Matthew looked at me, eyes wide, voice cracking. "Mom, I didn't mean it." Emily. I raised a hand, cut him off. "Enough." Matthew. The word was quiet, firm, final. He went silent, shoulders slumping. I looked at them, saw the truth clear, not love, not remorse, just fear. The fear of people realizing the prey they hunted was now hunting them. Emily tried one last time, voice breaking. "You can't take everything from us. We're family." I stepped closer, voice low but solid. "Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't erase each other." I pulled another file, thinner but heavier, full evidence from Adebayo. Unauthorized transactional loan application. Power of attorney. I handed it to Emily. She grabbed it like a mad dog. "If you want to sue," I said, voice soft but cold, "this is what you'll face. Every transaction, every forged paper, every step you took to steal from your mother-in-law. Go to court. And it all goes public." Emily stopped flipping, face white. Matthew whispered, almost inaudible, "Emily, what did you do?" She spun on him, screaming, "Don't pin this on me. Matthew, you were fine when the money was coming." I stood there, watching them tear each other apart. The marriage once united in quiet cruelty was cracking fast. I said, voice light but sharp, "I was your mother, Matthew. You made me your target." He lowered his head, lips trembling. But I felt no pity. I'd cried enough. "This isn't revenge," I went on. "This is protection. For the first time in years, I'm protecting myself." Emily threw the file to the ground, eyes blazing. "You'll end up alone." "You know," I smiled, a real smile. "First time in months. Alone is better than being used." I turned my back, walked away, didn't look back. I heard Emily shouting, Matthew muttering, but it didn't matter. I drove home, locket cool in my pocket. The kitchen welcomed me with silence, but now it was a place of strength, not pain. I sat, opened my laptop, checked account sale, money safe. Untouchable. I lifted the locket, kissed it softly. "Thank you, Richard," I whispered, "for reminding me I'm strong." That night, I sat by the window, watching streetlights dance. Silence was my weapon, sharp and precise. Matthew and Emily could scream, could sue, but they had nothing but the ashes of their plans. I'd won not by shouting, but with quiet steps, each one bringing me closer to freedom. I thought of the Adiemis, maybe settling into the house, filling it with laughter. I wasn't jealous. I was glad it belonged to people who valued it. My phone buzzed. A text from Matthew. "Mom, please, can we talk? This isn't what I wanted." I stared, but didn't reply. Another came. "I'm sorry. Emily got carried away. I didn't mean to hurt you." I set the phone face down, smiled quietly. "You only miss me now?" I said no. I didn't need his apologies. I needed myself, and I'd found myself not in their approval, but in the strength I built from the ashes of their betrayal. Today's morning light was gentle, like a soft whisper of comfort, slipping through the curtains and bathing the kitchen in a pale gold glow. I stood there, no longer clutching a coffee with tense fingers, but holding a chamomile tea, its warmth spreading through my hands like a light hug. After the showdown with Matthew and Emily on the driveway now, the Adayemi's house, I felt a new peace, not a gloating victory, but a quiet release. I'd cut the ropes tying me to their lies, and for the first time in years, I breathed without my chest feeling heavy. Today, I wasn't just Olivia, the betrayed mother. I was Olivia, the woman who'd found herself again, and I was ready to live for my future. I walked to the window, looked out at the quiet street, where kids rode bikes, their clear laughter ringing like music. I smiled, not for memories of Matthew as a boy, but because I knew I didn't need those memories to feel whole. The house was sold, money safe in a new account, and all of Emily's financial powers were cancelled. Mr. Dalton called this morning, his voice soft but sure. "Olivia, everything's done. They've gotten no chance to sue. The evidence is too strong. You're free." I thanked him, but when I hung up, I didn't feel the need to celebrate. My freedom wasn't in papers or money. It was in the silence I'd turned into strength, in the sharp blade I'd honed from their cuts. I sat at the kitchen table, opened a new notebook not to list betrayals or plans, but to sketch out the life I wanted. I wrote slowly, each word like a seed. Travel to Calabar, plant a flower garden, learn to paint. Like Richard always said, I smiled, remembering how he teased me when I complained about not having talent. Liv, you can paint the whole world if you try. He'd say, and now, I wanted to try not for him, but for me. I thought of quiet mornings, waking without worrying about a buzzing phone with demands from Matthew or Emily's fake smiles. I wanted days filled with birdsong, the scent of jasmine, and a stillness unbroken by others' greed. I lifted Richard's locket, held it tight, feeling the small engravings under my fingers. You'd love this. I whispered. Me living, not for them, but for me. The locket was cool, like a silent nod. I remembered Richard's words. Liv, you're a fire nobody sees till it blazes. That fire burned in me now, not destroying, but warming, guiding. I didn't need Matthew's forgiveness or Emily's fake smiles. I needed myself, and I'd found myself not in their approval, but in the strength I built from the ashes of their betrayal. I called Martha, wanting to share this feeling. How you holding up after yesterday? Liv, she asked, voice full of curiosity. I laughed. Oh, soft, real sound. I feel light. Martha, like I dropped a big stone. She laughed loud, voice sharp. You make me proud. Liv, you didn't just win. They're the ones scrambling now. I nodded, though she couldn't see. I don't want them to hurt. I just want them to leave me be. Martha snorted. They will, when they see you're no prey again. You're the hunter now. I looked out at the street, where sunlight danced on the pavement. I thought of Matthew and Emily, maybe arguing in a rented flat, trying to salvage their crumbled plans. Matthew's texts were still on my phone, but I didn't open them again. Mom, please, can we talk? And I'm sorry. Emily got carried away. His words were empty, like wind through an abandoned door. I didn't reply, not from anger, but because I didn't need to. You only miss me now, I said no. I thought, and set the phone face down, like a door I'd closed. I stepped onto my small balcony, breathing the fresh air. A sparrow perched on the railing, tilted its head at me, then flew off. I smiled, feeling like it carried away the last bit of my burden. I didn't need the house, their forgiveness, or the role of the mother who always gave. I needed myself, and I'd found myself a strong, silent, free Olivia. I thought of the ADMS, maybe settling into the house, filling it with laughter and dreams. I wasn't jealous. I was glad it belonged to people who valued it, not like Matthew and Emily, who saw it as a tool. That night, I sat by the window, locket in hand, watching streetlights dance. Silence was my friend, no longer my enemy. It was sharp, strong, and it had won me this not by shouting, but with quiet steps, each one bringing me closer to a life fully mine. I lifted the locket, kissed it softly. Thank you, Richard, I whispered, for reminding me I'm enough. I didn't need anything but myself, and for the first time, that felt like a gift. Under the soft glow of my kitchen, I sat, Richard's locket cool in my hand, my breath slow like gentle waves. This journey from Matthew's cold text, through Emily's sneaky transactions, to the driveway showdown led me through darkness to find light. I uncovered betrayal, not just from my son and daughter-in-law, but from my own blind trust. But from those ashes, I rebuilt myself not as a mother who gives endlessly, but as a strong, silent, free woman. I sold the house, locked accounts, and cut the ropes tying me to their lies. Each step, from signing with Dalton to watching Emily and Matthew crumble, was a declaration. I am enough. Now, as streetlights dance outside, I see a future unbound by greed or fake forgiveness. I'll go to Calabar, plant flowers, paint the pictures Richard always believed I could. Martha, the locket, and Richard's memory are my anchors, but I am the ship, free to sail. Matthew and Emily may scream, but their voices are just distant wind. I whisper into the darkness, voice soft as velvet. Silence isn't weak, and I believe it. This kitchen, this life, is mine, and I'll live. Not for them, but for Olivia, the fire now blazing bright.